Good afternoon, everybody. It's Jeff Jenkins and Eric Clayman here once again for our Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Facebook Live presentation. And today we're going to talk about several things, but the main one is student loans. They're in the news again, of course, because during the pandemic, the payment of student loans, there was kind of a moratorium on the payment of student loans. And that's coming to an end as of October 1st. So you're going to owe all that money on the student loans. The student loan people generally were not supposed to charge interest, but you still owe all that principal. And they don't have to extend the term of the loan either. They can take the principal payments that were missed, put them into the loan, see how much time is left, apply the interest rate that's applicable, and that's how much your payments are going to have to be. So they'll probably increase. As you know, Eric and I are bankruptcy attorneys and have been for most of our lives now.
A sad way to look at it.
Well,
but very true.
Yeah. So we've dealt with student loans over the years in bankruptcy, and things have changed from time to time with the student loans to the point now where they're basically non-dischargeable unless you can show that to pay the student loans would be an undue hardship. And several of the appellate courts have developed tests for this, which are rather stringent, although we do see a lightening up with bankruptcy judges across the country finding ways to craft the student loans so that they're affordable or even erased, partially erased, completely erased. And
well, let's talk about that, Jeff, for a second.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a couple concepts Jeff went over. I just want to make sure everybody understands the concepts. The second concept, or the first concept he mentions, is really the second one at the end of a bankruptcy case, is the idea of a discharge. A discharge means you don't owe the creditor any more money, even though you won't pay them back in full. You may pay them back in part. You may not pay them at all. You may pay them without interest. There's all sorts of ways that you may have to pay some of the debt, but you'll get a discharge. And a discharge means you don't owe them any more money, even though they weren't paid back in accordance with the contract. Now, for public policy reasons, there's all sorts of debts that after you file bankruptcy, you can't discharge. An obvious one, child support. Boy, would we be busy, Jeff, if child support was dischargeable.
Or if student loans were.
Yeah, or student loans. So child support is a debt where if you owe money on child support and you see your bankruptcy attorney, there's no magic wand to wave. You still owe that money. Income taxes that are less than 3 years old. Taxes that you've withheld from your employee. A sales tax that you took from a customer and didn't pay to the state. All these type bills, a fraud sometimes. There's all these, you can think public policy reasons why they are not dischargeable. Now, as Jeff mentioned, student loans over the years have fallen in both buckets. Sometimes they were completely dischargeable or forgivable by law. Sometimes it was based on their age, but now we're going through the most strict time, which is they are not dischargeable unless there's undue hardship. And the laws have been interpreted by the courts rather, I'm quoting Jeff, stringently. It's been tough to prove the cases are dischargeable. But that's the second concept in bankruptcy. There's another thing that bankruptcy does to help you. There's many things. But one of them is the moment you file bankruptcy, you're protected by what's called the automatic stay, which stays or stops all collection actions. No phone calls, no letters, no threats, no repossessions, foreclosures, evictions, garnishments, no wage garnishments, no bank account levies. So we have clients who have student loan issues. Was student loan the reason they filed bankruptcy? Student loan default the reason they filed bankruptcy? Maybe, maybe not. But it's a debt that has to be dealt with. And Jeff, what we found is the automatic stay in and of itself for some of our clients is sufficient just to give them a breathing room so they get their full paycheck and don't have to pay something like student loans and can instead target their disposable income towards rent, mortgage, food, clothing, car insurance.
Mhm. Yeah, we've have had situations from time to time where we get some client in and they can't make the student loan payments. They just can't. They don't have enough income. And they may have some other debts as well. But in a couple of instances, we've actually filed a Chapter 13 for these clients to buy them at least 5 years worth of protection from the student loan folks. And the thought is hopefully in 5 years, they're going to be better off financially. They may have secured a better job. And maybe then they can make the payments that the student loan folks want.
And we got rid of all their other debt.
Exactly.
So basically, they're juggling between student loans, credit cards, car payment.
Mhm.
And we do a 5-year plan to get rid of the credit cards, pay off the car more affordably
Mhm.
by getting rid of the credit cards. Often they don't have to be paid back at all. Remember, we talked about discharge. So you discharge the credit cards without payment, pay back the car more affordably. And at the end of 5 years, then deal with the student loans then. But there's no negative repercussions about not paying the student loans during that 5 years. There's nothing they can do to you, meaning collection action wise, because of that concept of the automatic stay.
Exactly.
Even though the debt is not forgivable, the bankruptcy still stops the collection action and protects you.
Right. Another interesting thing that Eric and I looked at lately, well, we've had a couple of novel things this week. We had, can you use a puppy as collateral? That was one matter. But this is something to think about. The federal government has certain programs for people who owe student loans. And if you get involved in one of these programs, what they're going to do is they're going to look at your income and your expenses. Every year, they're going to examine them. And based on that analysis, they're going to tell you what they think you can afford to pay on the student loans.
Right.
And if you do that for whatever period of time this program would last for, and they have different lengths of time, 10 years, 15 years, maybe even 20 years, anything that you didn't pay is forgiven. And that all sounds great, doesn't it? Until you start to remember that the IRS treats forgiveness of debt the same as realization of income. So if you entered one of those programs and at the end you had $200,000 that was forgiven, you're going to get taxed on $200,000 by the IRS and the state. And that's something that is very seldom mentioned and that people don't think about, but it's out there. In fact, we did have a case that we just saw this week that came down from the materials we read periodically about the new bankruptcy cases. And this particular judge had a 51-year-old woman, and he felt that she was able enough and had enough time left in her life to work and do a payment plan with the student loans, a payment plan based on her salary. But knowing that she might end up with a lump sum at the end that's going to be forgiven, he discharged that amount. So it was kind of a
half and it's what they used to call that, cut the baby, or split the baby or something like
that
that.
would be some Solomon-esque approach. Right?
It is. And I just want to emphasize, Jeff, and when a debt is discharged in bankruptcy, it is not taxed.
That's exactly right.
As opposed to a debt forgiven by a creditor for whatever reason, which is taxed.
Yeah.
So you're really only getting forgiven 3/4, 2/3 of the debt because you owe the IRS for the income.
Right.
So that's the emphasis here, was the bankruptcy judge allowing there to be debt forgiveness in bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
which is far superior. Jeff, let me just take a moment to remind people. I see our phone numbers up there. Your book is available for free right now.
Yes.
You can call that number on the screen. Ask for Miranda or Robert, who are right on the phones right now, awaiting your call, and we can mail you this book for free. This book it's called Make Bankruptcy Work for You. And Jeff and I have a lot of experience, and a lot of it is summarized in this book. It's really worth reading, even if it's not for you, but if it's for a colleague, friend, coworker, or relative that is having financial problems. Buy the book, read it. No, buy the book. I'll give it to you. Read it for free. Read it over, and you'll learn a lot. It's really worth reading. So I suggest you give us a call, ask for your free book, And there's not necessarily a section on student loans per se, but there's so much other really, really good information on this in here.
Yeah.
So read it when you can.
And I tried to make it understandable when I wrote it. I didn't put in a whole bunch of legalese. It's in language anybody can understand, I think. So it's you can get it for free. Just have to call us.
Numbers right under Jeff's arm, right? I hate
Right.
doing this. I never point this right. There you go. There's the
Sorry.
number. Yeah.
Okay. So anything else about student loans we want to talk about?
It's the largest consumer debt right now, right?
Yeah, it is. It's $1.7 trillion, and that's more than people owe on credit cards in this country. And it's staggering. And prior to the last election, we had a number of politicians talking about how they were going to solve this problem.
Yes, they were.
And what's happened since then? Nothing.
No, I don't believe so. I think they raised our gas tax maybe since then. I don't know. Besides that, not much. They raised our gas tax. Haven't done too much to help with the student loans. Jeff, should we slide people who are behind? What I tried to say earlier was people who are behind with their student loans don't necessarily file bankruptcy just because they're behind with their student loans. It's a indication that you're having financial problems.
Right.
And many of our clients, I've said this before, you've said this before, there's a statistic that 90-some% of people who file bankruptcy have medical bills. And you say, oh, it's a healthcare crisis. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that the medical bill is the sole reason you're filing bankruptcy. But those people who are having financial problems tend to have student loan debt and medical bills.
Right.
And these type things can all be dealt with. And how Jeff and I have handled this over the years is the first priority is the most important. Let's make sure we can put you into a bankruptcy to save your house.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, even if you're behind with your mortgage or your rent, that's what bankruptcy is for, really, to save your home. That's number one. So once you feel secure that you have enough money for your home, your food, your car insurance, and how about your electric and gas and all these other things that we have to deal with. Once you feel secure about that and you aren't bombarded with phone calls and letters and threats and wage garnishments and repossessions and all these bad things, life returns to normal. There's enough for you to worry about without worrying about this stuff. So you take a deep breath, you give us a call, and we go through it. We've gone through it before for others. We'll go through it for you. And you will find a place to live. Save your place to live.
Yep.
That's what we're here for.
Yep. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today was kind of an update on all the moratoriums that are out there about paying mortgages, rent, utilities, student loans. We just talked about that.
Check that off.
Yeah, check that off the list. So we just wanted to kind of give you an update about those things. Now, evictions in New Jersey, there's a moratorium on evictions, whether you're being evicted by a landlord or it's the result of you losing your home at sheriff's sale and the mortgage companies evicting you. The time, the moratorium on evictions keeps getting pushed back farther. Now it's at the end of the year, whether it's December 31st or January 1st, 2022. It doesn't make much difference, really. But that's when it is for evictions. Utilities.
But hold on, before we talk about that,
Okay.
Let's talk about what we talked about yesterday. That's the date when they can start throwing you out of your home.
Yeah, and we can get to that now.
Yeah,
Certainly, that's the important part of this whole thing. That while you might not be able to be evicted until the end of the year, the landlord-tenant court is going to continue or be cranked up again. And as far as that is concerned, the Supreme Court started allowing landlord-tenant trials for commercial properties and vacant properties on June 2nd. And they said they would probably start allowing landlord-tenant court for residential matters late in the summer. Well, so there's a time period between late in the summer and the end of the year. So if you've got if you're behind with your rent and you want to stay where you are, or even if you don't, you should really contact us and we need to talk to you before that court hearing.
That's what I wanted to emphasize.
Very important. The bankruptcy code gives us time limits about things, and it says, Eric was talking about the automatic stay. Well, one of the exceptions to the automatic stay that we have now in the bankruptcy code is if you're behind with your rent and your landlord obtains a judgment for possession, we can't do anything for you in a bankruptcy. The automatic stay then doesn't apply. So it can't stop you from being evicted like it used to be able to, even after the judgment for possession. And so it's crucial that you see us before landlord-tenant court happens, and it may very well be that you've got landlord-tenant court going on in August, or
That's what
something
it
like
sounds
that.
like.
Yeah.
Two things just to talk about. Jeff's right. You won't be no evictions till December 31st, but eviction date is not the date to talk to your lawyer. If your landlord has hired a lawyer, or if your landlord has sued you in the Superior Court of New Jersey, you need to talk to a lawyer right then. That's when you need to talk to us, talk to somebody, because you're going to lose rights along the way. Secondly, if you choose not to talk to us, but now you're being evicted, it may be a little late, but we can still help you with one important factor.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that your landlord doesn't go after you for the back rent.
Mm-hmm.
And that debt is dischargeable.
And could be significant. You may not have paid rent for a year and a quarter, longer even.
So if you haven't been paying your rent while you're living there, you certainly don't want to pay your rent while you're not living there. So filing bankruptcy. In fact, right now, if we're talking to anyone who has an ongoing wage garnishment as a result of someone has sued you and is garnishing your wages, you should call that number right now. Ask for Miranda or Robert. Get your free book. But we can stop the garnishment by the next pay. You will receive full pay. It's remarkable, but the lawyers who do garnishments, we know them all. And we call and we stop the garnishment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to discharge, get this debt forgiven. I went off topic a little bit, Jeff, but I just wanted to emphasize about rent.
Yeah.
It's just important. So rent, see us when you receive your summons and complaint, if not earlier.
Yeah, and probably you probably receive the summons and complaint, or at least a complaint. But the landlord-tenant court wouldn't have put down a date for court because the Supreme Court was saying there can be no landlord-tenant court until we say otherwise. But if you see something with a court date on there, you got to call us quickly so we can help you out and do something for you. The last thing we wanted to talk about was sheriff sales and foreclosures. There has been a moratorium for different reasons on foreclosures, just depending on the mortgage company and whether it's federally backed or not. They've had different time periods that the moratorium on foreclosures would apply to. And it's really affected all government-backed mortgages. And they comprise about 70% of the mortgages that are out there. 30% are not insured by the government, 70% are. But June 30th, which is very soon, that's next week, the moratorium on foreclosures for any mortgage company is gone. They can proceed with a foreclosure. And the only issue we have then is, what about the sheriff's sale? And the sheriffs are indicating that they're probably going to start having sheriff sales for residential matters, residential mortgages, sometime soon. They've been having them for commercial properties and vacant properties, but they're going to start them for residential properties. As soon as the Supreme Court says it's okay, then they're going to start doing that. And you've got to see us before the sheriff's sale, because again, we run into one of these things in the bankruptcy code that says if something happens, then the stay doesn't apply. You aren't protected. And if your house is sold at a foreclosure sale, there's no automatic stay anymore. You're not protected. I mean, there's some things that we can do. We don't need to get into them today, but there are some things.
Hey, make it easier on us, will you? See us before the sheriff. So
there are things we can do, but nothing really positively to keep you in the house forever. But if you see us before the sheriff's sale, now we can stop things so there will be no sheriff's sale. and we can take care of your mortgage arrears. In fact, the bankruptcy laws have been altered and even allow us now to extend a Chapter 13 beyond 5 years to as much as 7 years if COVID had something to do with you not paying your mortgage. And so that gives you a lot of time to try to work something out and get your arrears paid back.
That's right, Jeff. One more thing, I interrupted you and you didn't get to finish. Utility. What's the status of the utility situation?
Utilities. It was an interesting order, I think, from our governor. He's maybe he had it right. Somebody wrote it for him, and it kind of anyway. The latest order says that the moratorium on utility shutoffs ends June 30th. But
well, wait, if it ends, that means people will have their utility shut off on June 30th?
No, because then it went on to say that even though it's ended, the governor is going to give you a grace period till the end of the year, till December 31st, to try to work something out with your utility company or, come up with some money or whatever. So effectively, it's the end of the year now for utilities. And even the end of December would be the middle of the winter, kind of. And so things like electricity and gas that you would use for heat can't be turned off in certain circumstances. It depends on the family, depends on the people who live there. But utilities, you could certainly see us about anytime. It's not going to be forgiven. The utility company is going to want to get paid back.
Without a bankruptcy, it's not going to be forgiven.
Right.
Okay.
And so anytime you see us, we can do a bankruptcy. You've got problems if you go utilities, and we've spoken with a lot of people that have pretty substantial utility arrearages. We can just make them go away, most probably. And the utility company will just give you a new account number, and you'll be responsible for paying things as they come due after the bankruptcy is filed. So that's a good deal. You don't have to work out a payment plan with the utility company. You don't have to pay them back, and you'd have a tough time doing that probably anyway. The
deal we get is the best deal available.
That's right.
It wipes it all out.
0 is a good deal. So, are we good?
I think we're good, Jeff. One more reminder. Just give us a call at the phone number. Look at this. Watch this. See that? Very good, Richard.
It's like magic.
It's magic. Just give us a call, ask for Jeff's book, and makes for great 4th of July conversation.
There you go. So we'll close up for today, and we should be back next week. I think we're both going to be here Thursday at 2:00. So we'll see you then, same time, same place, and stay safe, everybody, and God bless.